So, I'm going to talk about women in history and their lack of representation. So, considering that half the population of the world is female, you're going to get some influential or monumental or whatever, etc., women throughout history. But the issue is that there have been some women throughout history have done like great things and had huge influence and changed the world, but you don't hear about them because it's okay. I'm not trying to sound like a feminazi. I'll explain why I'm saying this in a bit, but because it's his story, not her story. That's because I saw these protesters for they're trying to set up Women's History Month the way they have Black History Month, and there's these protesters saying it's his story, not her story, and all this other stuff. I don't. The name of it doesn't matter to me. I was just kind of trying to create a tie into that story. Anyways, well, the reason why I'm making this right now is because I saw a post on Tumblr about some historical women in American history that you don't really hear about, other than one of them, Harriet Tubman. It turns out you don't even hear all of her. Like, apparently she's way more than just the person who led people in the Underground Railroad. So, yeah, like, and I was thinking, I'm like, it's true, because throughout all my history classes, and I'm Canadian, so we're less admissive, and I only remember learning about 3 women in history class, and that was Harriet Tubman, Laura Secord, and Hatshepsut. I probably mispronounced that. I apologize. Anyways, and Hatshepsut was kind of glossed over actually by my teacher. I learned mostly about her from just reading the textbook because I was a nerd and I do that. Anyways, she was the first sole female ruler ever. It was ancient Egypt. And she was actually, Egypt had never prospered, but like Egypt had never prospered under any other ruler the way it did under hers. Basically, Egypt thrived better under her ruling than anyone else, but her successor tried to scrub her from history. Yeah, so yeah, anyway, so, and I'm Canadian, so the Laura Secord thing, if you're not Canadian, you probably have never heard of her, but I'm not going to go into her story right now anyways. So, yeah, and, like, after graduating high school, through my own whatever, I've learned about all these cool, interesting women who deserve to be in the history classes. And you don't hear about them at all. And it's kind of frustrating because, it's also, so many women weren't allowed, they were, had intelligence comparable to any of the other great minds that we all hear about, but the problem is that they weren't allowed to have those great minds, essentially. So, and I know it's in the past and they can't do anything about it now, but even despite that, you have women who thrived against it, like Marie Curie, or I forget the name, but the person who developed computer programming and all this other stuff. Actually, I heard about her from a show on TVO. I think it was Brain Bounce or something like that. In case you're wondering, TVO is, back when, you could get TV just from buying an antenna, some bunny ears. You got like 4 channels. Anyways, TVO was an Ontario channel. Memories. It literally stands for Television Ontario. Anyways, so, I remember hearing about her, but I didn't remember her name. But anyways, but yeah, like, you don't hear about these women, and these women, we could imagine where we could be if we allowed women to be scientific, artistically, or any politicians, whatever. Like, if we allowed them to be, explore their possible greatness, because we all have minds, we all have capability for intelligence. So it's kind of like whenever I see the thing like, what if the cure for cancer is locked in the mind of someone who can't afford education? Or in the mind of someone who's not allowed to have an education. Because, sometimes in some other countries, women aren't allowed to have, a college education in some places, or like it's very discouraged. And throughout history, it's kind of like it's been belittled and pushed away and pushed aside, like, so. And then there's also the economic side, like we could have some great inventions, like Nikola Tesla is a Tesla, sorry, is a perfect example of that. But money always wins. It's kind of really sad that the like how far we could be as a society or technology wise or etc., like all these different areas of human existence, how far we could be if we didn't limit ourselves on race, gender, um, sexual orientation, because there have been some, gays or whatever that weren't allowed to thrive because, they were thrown in asylums and whatnot because they were gay. Um, and even mentally ill people, actually, to think about it, because I love what Einstein said, but there's also other quotes relating to it. But there's a thin line between genius and insanity, and a lot of people have looked at it, and people who tend to be very intelligent or very creative almost always have some sort of mental illness. So yeah, it's not so these people were like they had any signs of mental illness, and instead of actually treating them and allowing them to function and let their genius thrive, just getting their mental illness treated, they just got thrown in asylums, and nothing that they ever said or came up with was worth any merit. So yeah. Oh, and another interesting one is that in Greek history, when it comes to the Greek writers and whatnot, a lot of people, I've heard places that the only surviving writings have been mostly from Homer. Not Homer Simpson, Homer as in the writer of the Odyssey and the Iliad. But there's another one that is actually more influential than what people think, is Sapphoros, or Sappho's. Mispronouncing ancient history names. Anyways, actually, the word lesbian comes from the Greek city-state Lesbos, and that's where all the women who either, absolutely refused to go to marry a man or whatever, or could not produce children or whatever, were sent. And Sappho's was a poet, and she was famous for writing love poetry to other women, so the word lesbian actually comes from that. But you don't really hear about Lesbos Sappho's, or Sapphoros, I can't remember, anyways, unless it's, you're actually looking at lesbian history things, so. I hate this shit where only certain people are allowed to be intelligent and influential or etc. because you're really limiting human development.